So today we got a couple of things lined up. We do want to start off with a round of Q&A on just on normal, Growlink consulting and Copilot help, general platform help. We want to make sure we got time for that. But as the invite said, we really want to go over our new feature that we're coming out with. So basically, we have what's called control strategy coming out, and then our blueprints 2.0. So, blueprints 2.0 is an evolution of kind of like the current blueprints that we have right now to give much better granularity and tools to making blueprints. This gives the ability to do irrigation, intraday set points, well, basically everything that we think everybody needs. And this is kind of going to be launching basically a kind of an open beta of the feature. So we're going to go through this today, and anybody that would like to, basically test this out on their own, um, if you send an email to consulting@growlink.com, and I'll bring this up a couple of times throughout the webinar today. But if you send an email to consulting.com just with your Growlink email and just your first and last name, we'll start a dialogue with you and get you set up. We're going to kind of roll it out to a portion of the group at a time. We this is basically we want people to start using it, start finding the things that we might have missed in the design, so that we can kind of quickly iterate on anything else that's outstanding, so that we can create just the best product for it. So yeah, that's kind of what the plan is for today. So I'll give another just few minutes here for people to get uh, questions into the chat, and if there's nothing, then we will jump right into just demoing everything.
Yeah, that's a good point, Ray. Zoom kind of changed things up, so you have to press the three dots where it says more down at the bottom to be able to get to the Q&A portion.
Oh, thank you. 'Cause, yeah, I had totally missed that.
Yeah.
See, Carrick and Allie are here.
Nice.
Thanks for the
Kick them out.
support, friends.
Got to
Yeah,
kick
kick
Jared
them
out.
out. Okay, cool. Well, here, Marcus, why don't we go ahead and start just diving into this thing, and we'll stop periodically to ask questions. So as we go through this, if people are interested in just knowing more about something that is going on screen, again, drop it in the chat, drop it in the QA, and we can kind of stop and answer any questions there. So
Yeah. I'll share my screen like Shay just said. I'm gonna walk through it as if like we're just creating a blueprint together because that's really where we're trying to get the feedback on is the real usability of it.
yeah.
I'm not going to be looking at questions, but they will be. So if at any point, Shay, just stop me in my
Cool.
rambling.
Sounds
And
great. I'm
and
used to that at this point.
yeah. All right. So I'm sharing my screen. Let me know when you guys can see that.
We are seeing it now.
Cool. All right. So I'm going to go to the starting off. We're going to go to the blueprints section right here. So there we go. So we're going to go to the blueprint section here to where we access that just like we currently do right now. Let me collapse these right here. Get them off my screen. Okay. So we're going to go to the blueprint section just like we currently do right now. If you already have blueprints made, they're going to be listed right here. Um, Otherwise, we're going to go and create a new blueprint. When you create the blueprint, you basically just enter a name in. So in this case, we're just going to do I don't know, demo test as the name and press create. So this is where things kind of change up a little bit. So if you've used blueprints before, I'm sure you're used to the layout of how it was. We have changed that up a bit here. So as we can see, we immediately start into the first stage. We can see right now, currently, the total days, it's 7 days. This is kind of like a little synopsis up at the top of the entire blueprint. Because we only have this one stage here, that's all it's going off of. So it says one stage. 7 days right here. So it says total days of this blueprint is 7 days. And then because we've set the setting of the growth phase to vegetative, that's what it is right here. And then based on what physical attributes and components that we're going to be like preloading into it, that will show up here. And you can kind of see, does it have climate, lighting, irrigation, one of these, two of these, however many it happens to be. So if you were just to create a blueprint for lighting, it would just show lighting and you could label that and put it all there. But for this one, we're going to do all of them. So to go deeper into the stages, we're just going to press this little drop down right here. And now it's going to pull up the form field where we can edit everything. So on the page we have it's climate, lighting, and irrigation that we can go through, and we can cycle between these as often as we want, kind of like the Copilot program. So we'll start with climate to begin with.
One
Underneath,
second, let me just interject here real quick. Christian says if we can make it any bigger, I don't know if you can kind of hit the control button and hit plus.
yeah, I just zoomed
Let's
in.
that looks pretty good. Christian, how does that look, buddy? Or I'm sorry, Christina. Sorry, I will read before I just start saying things.
Yeah, this is about a zoom. It might distort if I go much more, but I can if I need to.
Cool. Uh, Christina, let us know if that's more legible. One other thing is Dean put, thanks, that was a lot. You got it. Dean, yes. So we're currently updating the links fleet with an update that is allowing blueprints to work on Lynx devices. So by the time this goes live, the Lynx fleet should be good to go.
Yeah, we good?
I
Yep,
meant
we're good. And,
to
and Ray
I,
gave him an answer as well in
I
chat.
meant to
Cool.
backspace it and I hit enter instead. My bad.
All good. All right. So when we got climate here, we're going to go into this. There is this little toggle at the top, which I will point out real quick. This is for in a scenario like let's just say you just own like a precision irrigation controller for us, and you don't do any type of lighting or climate control, but you still want to use blueprints. So if that was the case, you would just disable that right there, and there would be nothing showing. Same thing for lighting, but irrigation you actually would use. So in this case, though, we are using it, so I'm going to keep that enabled. So to start, we've got our temperature. We've made it kind of simple. So if you've ever used like our dynamic rules in the set points drawer, this is essentially that where we have a singular set point that all the rules for the room are going to be pulling from. So like we're going to set up our rules on the room and we will go through that maybe today, maybe not today, but either way, the actual rules that dictate like your dead bands and things like that for all of your different devices, those are going to live on the actual room. What a blueprint is going to be is just the physical set point that those rules are going to be referencing. So for example, if you wanted to have 75 degrees as the daytime as your singular set point, like you would in a normal dynamic rule, this is where it's pulling that data from. And conversely, if we change that on a day-to-day base, it's going to go ahead and update that so that the rules in your room can then pull from it. So here we have a daytime value of 75, a nighttime value of 70. We can change that however we want. In this case, I'll just do 76 for the sake, or actually, I'll actually make it kind of realistic. We'll do 82. All right. So the cool thing that we got now with this, which we're really excited about, is intraday set points, which we've kind of teased around a little bit before. So what this is now is it allows us to actually change this set point throughout the day and night multiple times. So if we didn't want to just hold a singular set point of say 82 throughout the whole daytime period, we have the ability to scale and move that. So right now this is a little visual bug with this line here, but you'll see it kind of goes away. So this is a fully interactive graph. So if I want to shift this, up to like just here, for example, it now changes it and it puts it at 9 a.m. and we're going to 90 degrees, for example. Now, if I want to create a new point, so let's just say right around noon, I could click here and it dropped it down to 72 where I put. So I just clicked in here, and I can actually click as many times as I want and do the same thing all throughout here just for like some crazy thing if you really want to mess with your units. But this is just to kind of show we have the ability to shift this set point all throughout the day. So if you're trying to enact some form of strategy, if you're trying to overcome some form of physical limitation in your room, this can be really, really helpful. You can kind of scale up and scale down what you're trying to accomplish. And with this being fully interactive, it's really, really easy to edit these points and move them however you need. And every time you make a point, I do have it zoomed in right now, which is why it looks so crazy, but normally it's not quite so big. But you can kind of see all of every single dot here has a corresponding card with it with a synopsis of it, and it then allows you to kind of fine tune it. So in this case, I really wanted it at 10. I just so happened to click at 10:01. I could just change that real quick to 10. It updates it there. And let's just say I wanted it at, a certain degree. I can fine tune that. So this is actually going to be had across all of these. So humidity and CO2, we can do intraday set points as well. So I'm gonna delete a few of these out because that's kind of crazy. Yeah, we'll just do a couple for right now. So yeah, so we can set that. That should be good to go. Um, and now we can move on to humidity. For humidity, it's the exact same thing as what we currently have in our dynamic set points as well. We wanted to kind of keep that close. So daytime, I could do 75% humidity. Nighttime, I could do 50. We can also switch and use this toggle to shift it to VPD as well. So a lot of people will like to use VPD to trigger their points as well. You can do that just the same, just by hitting this toggle. But otherwise, we're just going to stick with humidity for this example. And again, same thing. Intraday, I can change it. This is going to be really, really useful for managing humidity spikes going in the nighttime. So like right at the last like 30 minutes or so of the day, I can really focus on just cranking on my units and dropping that humidity down as much as possible to help make that spike a little bit more manageable going into the night. So these are just different use cases that we can do with that. Um, so yeah. Again, you can have fun and just click around and do all sorts of crazy shit. This is kind of, I like this because it just gives the user, you have full flexibility now. If whatever type of strategy, whatever thing you might be battling, it doesn't matter what it is. You can really fine tune things on a level that I get. Technically, you could have done before if you were setting up static rules and schedules and things like that, but it would have been very, very difficult, and you definitely wouldn't have been able to use dynamic rules, and you definitely wouldn't have been able to pre-schedule those out over a period of time. So this, like I said, is just a really huge upgrade for usability across the board.
Well, and this makes it so you can see them so much. You can see everything on one graph, where kind of as it is now, it's kind of hard to get the full picture of exactly the strategy that you're doing.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and then CO2. As you can expect, same shit. But this is really, really cool. I like this feature. We had to do some meditations in the rules, so I am pretty proud of this one. But this, we can also now set points in the night for this, which typically we always barred people out from doing because, plants aren't really using CO2 at night, and they're already increasing the CO2 in the room on their own naturally. So we usually didn't allow that, but where a shortcoming with that is a lot of times, you'd start your day off, the lights would kick on full blast, everything would start cranking, and your CO2 levels took a little bit to actually build up. So at this point now, we can actually preload and set like a front load in the room. So like I can actually start, say 30 minutes or so before it lights on, and I can get my levels up to, whatever it is I'm trying to run. Um, and I can keep them there. Let's see. That way we don't have, oh, that's the problem right here. So I can actually just in this case, I could start the room, right, this looks like about a half hour before lights on, something like that. I can get my levels up to the level that I want them to be. That way, as soon as everything kicks on, the plants have everything they need to get rocking and rolling. And then I can even, step it up throughout the day. And then maybe as I start getting closer to the end of that lights on period, I can start ramping it down, in step stages or however it is that I need to do it. So. Like I said, this was to me, this was a pretty big thing. I really like that. Um, any questions on climate? Because otherwise, I think that about sums up the majority of it. So.
on just a minute here to see if they want to ask a question, and then yeah, we can move on to the next. Cool. All right, Marcus, let's go ahead and show them lighting.
Cool. All right. So now we're still in the same blueprint stage. So in this case, we'll just do veg week one. This is an example here. Um, well, we've already set what we want for our environment, our climate. So now we're going to go to lighting. And this is where we're going to set our lights on and off schedule for this right here. I'm just going to keep it defaulted to 8 to 4. I think it's this 18/6 cycle. So now we have the ability to differentiate between overhead lights and under canopy lights. Again, this is a blueprint. This is something that is meant to be applied room to room generically. You could take it from one facility, apply it to another. And so based on this is solely based on what equipment you actually have. So for example, you could have a blueprint that has under canopy lights in it, or an overhead light blueprint that has spectrum tune lights in it, but you go to apply it to one of your rooms, say one of your rooms isn't updated yet and it doesn't have under canopies in it. That's okay. Because again, all of the physical room setup still is going to live in the room, but you can still apply this blueprint to the room and any pieces that made up to each other, for example. So, okay, cool, I have overhead lights and they have spectrum tuning on them. Great. If it lives in this blueprint, it's now going to get applied to that room. Same thing, if there's under canopies, great. These set points will get applied. If not, if say your room doesn't have under canopies, it just kind of sits here. It doesn't really do much at that point. But either way, we have the ability to differentiate between them for the people who do have, this equipment. So you don't have to use it, but it is there if you need to. So we have two different kinds here. As you can see, there's this drop down that says intensity set points and spectrum set points. We have that for both overhead lights and under canopy lights. So basically, we'll just go through intensity first. So basically, intensity is meant for HPS, LED lights that don't have spectrum tuning on them, like multiple channels. This is basically just, okay, I'm going to change my voltage up to dim them up and down. So basically, the way this works is you can have your starting intensity of what you want. Basically, as soon as those lights kick on, what do I want that to be? In this case, I'll go to 70%. All right. And you, just as always, we have a ramp up and ramp down. If you want to use it, you don't have to. In this case, I'll just do a 15-minute up and down. So if this is where it ends and this is where you want your rules to end, totally fine. However, just like what we just did with intraday set points for the climate, if we wanted to do that for lighting as well, we could just toggle this little button here that says change intensity set points throughout the day. And so when I hit that toggle now, I get another graph. And just like we had before, I can see exactly when everything's, gonna happen. So for this right here, as you can see, we got 3 points, even though we only have one change throughout the day, and that is because we've got the ramp up and ramp down. So I have my starting point here, and slowly it ramps up to the value it needs to over that 15 minutes. And then it's going to hold that value of 70% that I have here. And then I said at 12, it's going to change to 75. That's just what it kind of defaulted to. But again, we can change that by just clicking and dragging. So now it's going to go up to 85. And let's say I'm like, you know what, actually, I want to bring that back where, 2 hours in or whatever, I crank it up to 85. It's as simple as just clicking and dragging. And let's just say peak day, I want to bring it down and let it, come down a little bit, and I can actually step it down all throughout the day if I really wanted to. So again, this is just for basic dimming, but you have the option to do all of these things here. Um, and that's about, it doesn't get really much more complex than that. It's basically just click and drag, delete out what you don't want, and you set your lighting schedule throughout the day. And this can be a really good way if you are going in with like an apogee meter, some form of PPFD, like external sensor or something like that, or if you're just using one that actually ties into our system, you'll be able to kind of see like what the PPFD range is. And you can say, all right, well, I know during this time, maybe the first 3 hours of the day, I don't want to blast my PPFD too much. So I'll tune it down to about right here. And then maybe, you could just, again, whatever strategy you're running, if you're like midday, I want to crank it up a little bit. Let's blast it a little just for a set period of time. You could do that just by going like that right there. And then Click right there. Yeah, something like that. You could crank it up and then bring it down, and you can associate these percentage values of dimming with whatever your PPFD is at the canopy level. Um, so yeah, that's about where that goes. And the same thing is going to apply with under canopies as well. So like again, if I went here, it would be identical, just like this. The other option that we can do is we can go to spectrum set points now. So this is for lights, like if you got a light that can do individual spectrums, and where you can kind of shift those. Usually the way those are done is through like our digital light link or our four port light link, or if you're using like a UL panel, just hook right in or connect controller. But basically we have the option once you set that you can select which channels that you're trying to edit. Um, we had to include everything in for all the most popular lighting companies that are out there right now. So there's quite a bit here. But again, this is going to match up to what you have in your room. So that will be set on the actual room page. So when you go to your room, you're going to say, okay, like for example, I'm running matrix lights or fauche lights or whatever, and these specific lights, they have, white, they've got deep red, far red, UV, some have green at the mammoths, you got all sorts of different kinds there. Whatever light you have, you're going to be able to select what those spectrums are. And then that way, if you set those in this blueprint and they happen to match, like, okay, cool, I set a deep red set point here, and then the room that I'm applying this blueprint to has a light that has a signed channel for deep red that we've, connected to a physical port on the light. That's going to allow it to immediately pull this reading in and say, okay, we're going to be changing it as the user wants it right here. So just in this example, I'll go in and I'll just pretend like I'm using like a Think Grow or any other type of matrix like four spectrum tune. So we usually have a white light, we've got a deep red, a far red, and a UV for those. So I have the option here under each one that I can actually set a custom amount. So like because each of these in terms of how it's controlled is set as a voltage, like for example, the whites have their own 0 to 10 volt channel, the deep red will have its own 0 to 10, far red will have its own 0 to 10, and UV will have its own 0 to 10 volt signal or channel. So I can actually change what that voltage is. So this is kind of what I want to call like a lighting recipe. And that will be something that we're going to be working on adding in here. So you can kind of like, just like our dosing recipes for like our fertigation system, you'll be able to actually set the same thing. So for right now, we do have to do it manually, but again, this is why we're doing this, the whole beta version of it. So like, for example, I could set a recipe. I could say like, well, I want 80% power done to the white light. I want to maybe tune my deep red to 50, my far red to 30, and then UV, maybe I'll go to 15, right? And this ratio, like think of these as ratios to each other. This is the total spectrum that I want to be giving the plant right now. So you can run it like that throughout the whole day if you want to, or you can actually change the spectrum up throughout the whole day. And this is going to become really popular in the future, or I mean, even now, where a lot of people are getting into experimenting, with like far red lights, early before lights on and after lights on, or, they're changing up when they want to give UV throughout the day and how much of it. All sorts of things like that. And so that's just like everything else. We have the intraday set point where I can just press change set points throughout the day. And so basically what this is allowing me to do is specify, okay, at lights on, I want this spectrum right here, right? Well, what if we're in one of those examples like where we just talked about where you want to give some red light or any spectrum of light, whatever you're happening to do, before lights actually come on. So you want to do like, I don't know, 2 minutes or 3 minutes, 5 minutes or something like that. You just want to wake them up or something with that. Well, you could go in here and just press that add set point, and then you have the option now to actually choose a set point before lights on, between lights on, or after lights off. And so, like, for example, the program knows like at 8 a.m., that's when my lights on schedule is going to be. So if I wanted to do a before lights on, I could go ahead and press that. And now it gives me the option to specify like what time. So if I'm at 8 a.m., I could come in here and say, like 7:58, for example. So that's just 2 minutes prior in this example. And so it's going to default to the exact same spectrum that I already set. However, I know that let's say I don't want to give white light early on like that, before the lights come on. I can reduce that down to zero. I could crank, deep reds don't usually work like that, so I'll leave that at that. But far reds, I could put like 100% and just blast just those and 5% UV or whatever, I could leave that zero. You have the option to do whatever it is that you want to do. By doing this now it's basically saying, okay, we know your light schedule is at 8 a.m. That's when the lights come on. But at 7:58, we're going to go ahead and just kick on the far red spectrum for you so you can, run through whatever strategy you want to do at that point. And then 2 minutes later, when lights come on, we're going to go ahead and kick on all of these other spectrums, right? And you can do this as many times as you want throughout the day. So you can say, okay, cool. Well, I'm going to run this for the first 2 hours of lights on. And then let's say I want to change it, middle of lights on. Well, now I can come in and say, all right, at 8, 9, 10, let's do it at 11. So 3 hours in, I could change this at 11. Maybe I want to crank up the UV now to 50%, right? And maybe I want to, increase, I don't even know. I'll like decrease this. I'll increase this to 100, whatever it happens to be. I can change that spectrum up and let it run until, I give it another set point. If I don't give it another set point past this point, it is going to run until lights go off, right? It's just going to take whatever the last one was and send it. So if you want to shift that all throughout the day, you can. And then same thing, if I want to finish the day on just a custom spectrum, again, I'm not trying to go over strategy here, but let's just say, for example, I want to just blast them with UV at the very end of the day. I could say after lights off, which we know is at 4 p.m. I could say, all right, after lights off for the next 10 minutes. So let's go from 4:10 p.m. So that's a 10-minute cycle there. I'm going to turn everything off except for UV, and I'm just going to hit them with 100% UV. If you want to do that, that's how you would do that right there. So again, this is for you to play around with, mix and match. I'm sure there'll be a bunch of guides coming out. There's gonna be a lot of people saying, what the good strategies are, and you'll be able to play around with this stuff yourself. But we just wanted to give this feature for people who do have these lights, they have them implemented, and they want to be able to like really get the most out of our operating system to be able to control those. Um, so yeah, I mean, as you can see, we can make this pretty complex. We can also make it real simple. It doesn't have to have all of this, but if you got it and you want to use it, you have the option to at this point. And the same thing goes for under canopies. So there's a few companies out right now who have under canopies. Usually it's just like a 2 channel or whatever. Maybe they got more, but whatever it happens to be, you have the option to just crank them on, just turn them on all the way, let it sit right there, or you can tune that spectrum. So you can say, I only want 50% red and I want 100% white. You know, that can be just run all throughout the day, or you can do just like kind of what we did here. And you could say, all right, I want to turn on a couple spectrums before lights on, and maybe I'll turn a couple spectrums on after lights off, right? So you have the option, like I said, to do all of that as well, and it's done the exact same way, as we do it here. So, um, any questions on that?
Let's see here. Tyler asked a question, does this work if you have multiple lighting zones in a room?
Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, when it comes to applying blueprints in a room, this is going to be really answered when we get to the actual room setup, which is like a wizard that is all part of this release that will like convert your current room into kind of how we're managing it in the new style. But basically, you will be able to define your zones in your room for both irrigation and for lighting. So if you had 10 lighting zones in your room and 10 irrigation zones in your room, let's say you broke everything down on control level to 10, every single row, 10 different rows is all different. Um, you would be able to specify that in the actual room setup. So you'd say zone one is its own lighting zone. Here's the ports that are assigned to it for a control standpoint, and here's what spectrums they're capable of, right? We're good. Same, you can do the same thing for irrigation, which we're going to get into in a sec. But when it comes to applying blueprints to a room, you like kind of build out a run. Environment, it's just one. You just pick one environment set point or one environment blueprint to apply to a room because usually a room is sharing the entire environment. Can't like break that one up. But when it comes to individual zones, you can actually apply as many different blueprints as you want in a room. Like technically, if you had 10 irrigation zones, 10 lighting zones, you could technically apply a different blueprint to every single one of those, which is really helpful if you want to run different genetics in the room. Say you have 10 different cultivars on each one has their own row and each one has um, its own light control split up. If you've done it that way versus like the whole room, you could say, you could make a blueprint for I don't know, just as an example, you could like, okay, here's a cheese blueprint, and that's what I'm running in row one. And so I'm gonna apply my cheese set points to the lights, and I'm gonna apply my cheese set points to the irrigations, right? Like you have the ability to do that. And then on row two, if you wanted to do like a sour diesel row on that one, you can say, okay, well, I'm gonna apply my sour diesel lighting blueprint to this row and my sour diesel lighting blueprint or irrigation blueprint to the irrigation in that row. So you can actually change that up depending on how many different blueprints that you have saved in your library, and you can just kind of mix and match and apply them as however you need to at that point.
Perfect. And then Julian asked a question I'm just going to answer live. He was just asking what type of HVAC units we can control. Um, so Ray had said, we can control things off of dry contact relays, BACnet IP, BACnet MSTP. We're also working on Modbus right now as well. I mean, if you have Modbus units and you're wanting to control them, we can usually work with you and like some third-party integrator to integrate to those as well. So, yeah, just wanted to clarify that for the group in case anybody else had that same question. Pat Lanning asks, my humidifiers are on a PowerLink plug. Can they now be controlled by a blueprint? Once the all the links fleet is finished being updated, which is kind of just going on in the background, by the time this is fully released, yes, absolutely, the power links will be able to use blueprints, and you should be able to have it on your device. Your basically, if that's your humidifier device, it'll be mapped to your humidifier set point in here, and will turn on your unit and turn it off and on to meet your set points. So let me know if you got any more questions on that, Pat.
Was that it for this for the lighting?
Yeah, that looks like that was it for right now.
Cool. All right, now we can get into irrigation. So on irrigation, this is actually going to be where, for those who are using our stuff right now, I'm sure you're used to having the irrigation tab up at the top, that is basically going to be where this is right now. In this build right here, it's not quite set up that way just yet. Oh, I'm sorry, that it is set up like that, but in the actual room dashboard, when you go to like manage it, because this is a blueprint, this is what we see right here, which essentially allows you to set up all of your Copilot stuff in here ahead of time. Or if you're not using Copilot, you can just go ahead and set up your timers right here. So like we just defaulted to P1 flush, P2 timers here, but this is basically just like a simple timer program that we currently have right now. You can always go through, add as many timers as you want. And this is basically if you want to just pre-schedule out standard timers, just like you normally would with the simple timer program. If you are using Copilot, it's as simple as just enabling this checkbox right here. And then we actually have two options when it comes to managing that. We have this slider feature it's new. Basically, this is kind of just, you don't really know exactly what you want to do just yet. So we have this like slider bar that you can kind of click and drag. One side is vegetative, one side is generative. This is basically just to kind of get you in the right place in terms of set points. So you could say, well, right now I want to be full generative, and maybe I want to start scaling that down. And really, what this is mainly going to adjust is going to be your drybacks and EC targets throughout, because usually P1s are pretty stable for the most part. But this option is there if you want that. It is a little bit of a black box in the sense that it's like I have assigned values to each of these. Um, you're not, and you will see, I actually, no, I don't think you'll see them. So this is kind of like you're kind of relinquishing a little bit of control there and how that goes. But if you want to actually manage every single set point like you currently can in Copilot right now, you just basically press this little tab that says Manage Set Points Manually. And then we have kind of restructured how Copilot is set up. And this is going to be a little bit different than what it'll be in the room when we actually go through that layout in UI. Not far off, but the actual room has, you know, remember on the original Copilot program that we have now, we have the schedule tab, then we have the targets tab, and then the suggestions tab. Well, we got rid of the schedule tab because this is blueprints, right? So really this is where we set points. We're not usually setting physical timers of what we want to do there. Like I'm not going to come in here and try and define a target value like day by day, or like not a target value, a set timer value. So for example, like a 2 minute shot on a P1, it wouldn't make sense to like try and pre-schedule that day by day because the whole point of Copilot is to make adjustments throughout the run. So what makes more sense is to be able to set our percentage values that we would find under the targets tab. So for example, I can come in under P0 and I have my 2% additional dryback value here, just like I would on the targets tab. I can do my P1 targets of a 3% ramp up shot size, you know, have my ramp up shot size, my ramp up dryback size, my fuel capacity, P2s if there are any, and P3s as well. You know, I can basically, and my EC. This is where basically we narrowed it down in Blueprints to just have the targets tab. Um, and you still get the graph and everything, so it kind of makes it easy to plan out ahead of time what you're trying to do. But as you can see, we got rid of all of those different tabs, so you don't have to jump between them anymore. And on the actual program, we actually come, it's set up just like this, how the new skin will be, where under set, you have set points and then you have Copilot settings. So the set points under here where it says like P1, for example, you will have both the targets and the schedule tab under there. And again, we'll get into that when we actually go through that, but this is the layout that it's going to be done in the room, which is why it's set up this way here. But for right here, just for this sake, where we're talking about blueprints, we really only need to see what those target values are going to be and how we want to schedule those either week by week or day by day, depending on how intricate you want to go with it. But basically, we got two tabs. You got set points where we can set in what we want our target values to be, same interactive graph. Although this time it's pretty cool. I'm really happy about this. Whenever you make a change, it is immediate. So like there is no delay, there is no clicking in a box and waiting, you know, for it to take forever to update. Like for example, I came in, I want to change my overnight dryback from 15 to 30. It's just immediate. You know, I could change that to 20 very, very quick, which I really like because that was something that kind of annoyed a lot of people in the last one. It's just it was constantly refreshing and you'd click, you'd type something in, and then you know it would be caught up loading and you go to type the next thing and then it just reverts back and you end up kind of messing up what you were trying to do just because it just couldn't keep up with you. So that's been changed for this one. It is very responsive now up at the top, and we've also added in this current time slot here. So you can actually see where you're currently at in the day, and you know, track how everything's going at that point. Um,
That's so cool. I've definitely had a lot of support calls where someone's like, "Why isn't doing it the thing right now?" It's like, "Oh, it's was offset by a couple of hours because of like the way their days were set up," and
mhm.
it's so cool just to see where you're at in that schedule.
Yeah, and this is actually a kind of a preview when we get into like the actual um, whatever you want to call it, control strategy, like the new version of how we're going to be managing set points in the physical room, even without blueprints. Every single page, environment, lighting, all that has a graph like this where you can see what the target graph should look like. And then you can kind of see an overlay of where you're at and how you're trending. You can see where the current time is. Like, for example, on the temperature scale, you could see kind of what we had set, like if you got them going up and down and swinging throughout the whole day based on your set points, you can see those set points in that graph. And you can also see the actual physical temperature data overlaid on it and see how close are you tracking and where you're currently at in that 24-hour cycle. So that's going to really help out a lot in the future when it comes to data analytics and, you know, status reports, finding out how you're trending, if we need to come in and dial in rules and things like that. So this is just a facet of that we've pulled into, you know, the whole irrigation side of things to really help stand it out. So yeah, so basically two things. We wanted to simplify it. So basically you could find all of your set points in here. Nothing really has changed. It's the same thing as the targets tab is now currently. But under Copilot settings now, this is where all of the features from the information tab that we had to grab and also the suggestions tab, the advanced settings that the elusive advanced settings that were hidden in the back. Everything is very visible here now. So like we start off, you could choose your prioritizations, whether you want start time or start BWC with a synopsis of what that means and what's happening. You can turn on autopilot and turn off autopilot here. Um, I want to make a note. This is really cool because think of it like this. This is on a scheduled time block. So right now I have it set for 7 days. So everything I'm doing here is good for 7 days, right? Until I schedule the next one. But if I wanted to break this down day by day, there is times I could come in here and I can turn autopilot on for like a day or two, and then I can on schedule turn it off for a couple days, and then because I know like I'm making scheduled changes and I want to let things kind of balance out before it kicks in, so I can kind of keep things smooth. Like you have the option, everything we're changing here, you can literally get as granular down to a day. So just I'm gonna skip ahead, like we've talked a lot about like field capacity locks and things like that and disable P2s. Like these are things that like day by day we usually want to run them. And sometimes I'll keep it on for a week, sometimes I keep it on for 3 days. I can if I've run a genetic before and I kind of know how it goes, I can like schedule out like a 3 or a 5 day block where I keep my fuel capacity locked and keep, that way I know for a fact in that stage I'm not pushing runoff. And then, I can come in and set a new time block for 4 days after that. And I can go ahead and turn it off again and go back to where I'm going. So basically everything that you do manually now, even with autopilot on, can be pre-scheduled ahead of time. And so that's like I said, it really opens up a lot in terms of taking a lot of load off of you and letting you get back with the plants, not having to essentially be a secretary and a manager, over everything. You're just kind of setting what you know to be true and then letting it run from there and dialing it in as you need to. So going back through, yeah, we can enable autopilot here. We can turn on the overnight failsafe here. Um, exact same setup as it was before. You enter what the value is here, just a different skin on it. And this might even change too. We might make it a little cleaner. We'll see where we're going with that and what the feedback is. But everything is functionality wise is the exact same. Target units, this is like where on the targets tab you could choose between absolute and relative for your values. You would just set that here for your prioritizations. And then the advanced option tab that was hidden on the suggestions tab, everything is put in here, and we've actually added a couple new things. So, for example, you can lock your P1 interval, you can lock your P1 quantity, you could disable your P2s weeks 1 through 3 very easily here. Turn off your EC. This was found before on the targets tab next to the EC target. We can go ahead. We just went ahead and lumped it in here. And then fuel capacity lock, same thing. If you wanted to lock your fuel capacity, as soon as you click that, you get these additional fields at the bottom that don't exist otherwise, that allow you to set what your target value is. And so in this case, I could where are we at? I'll set it to 42. And as you can see, the graph is immediate with what it's doing. And then we've simplified this ever so slightly where now your valves are assigned in the actual room. So all you got to do is just check. Do you want me to disable the unique valve if the field capacity is reached? Whereas before you had to actually go through and select what those were. So now it's just as simple as set your number and press disable valve if you want it to disable the valve. Otherwise, it does not have to. So yeah, like I said, this functionality wise, nothing much has changed. Like I said, we added in, the disable P2s. But we did that, a little while ago. But if you weren't up to date on that, that is a feature now. So if you are running weeks 1 through 3 and you are pushing, you're running this EC stacking strategy and you're actually triggering fail safes at night, the program will try to add P2s during the day. We don't want that. And so you could just go ahead and press disable P2, and it's going to prevent Copilot from activating P2s, and it will allow you to continue running on your overnight fail-safes until you're done with your strategy. So I usually keep this locked or disabled on all through weeks 1 through 3. I never want a P2 in there. So, but again, you're free to do exactly as you'd like with this. So, um, but
Okay, I
yeah,
got a
I mean,
couple. I got a
go
couple
ahead.
quick questions that I'll just get through real quick, Marcus.
Hmm.
Give you a chance to breathe. Mia Wolf, she asked a question. Mia, I'm sorry, I don't quite understand this, but I think what you're asking for is, will there be a guide to this? Is there a date for when this is being released? And but thank you for the kind wishes at the end. She said seems like it's a lot, and it's these are all new steps for her. So we are going to be coming out with a guide. We should be polishing up our ebook here very soon. Phileas, give me 1 second to translate from German, and I'll get to you, bud. Um, um, so yeah, there is going to be a guide that has strategies and talks about how to use all this stuff. We still plan on putting some more embedded tool tips and things like that into this as well, just as we're going to see where like the main pinch points are. Obviously, if there's a consistent pinch point, there might be a UI component that we need to change to make it flow a little bit better. But yes, we are coming out with an ebook that should I mean, it's done. We're just putting like the polish on it. I don't know what the date we're releasing that, but it should absolutely be releasing way before this is publicly released. So we will have that, and that should help a lot.
Your translation there, Shay, is he's asking when this will all be available.
Gotcha. So we are hoping for the end of this quarter or beginning of the following quarter. So this is an open beta. So right now, if anybody wants to use this right now, just email consulting@growlink.com if they would like to basically get this early. Again, we're just looking for feedback on its usability, if it has all the features in there, if there's small tweaks and things that like you'd like to see. This is basically your chance to help design this feature and, a evergreen piece of the platform. Like I see Sean Sullivan's in here. He gives us a ton of fantastic feedback. Your intensity slider bar, it's coming, buddy. Uh,
Oh
uh,
yeah, that was one thing I did leave out. Yeah,
yeah,
that's done.
yeah.
It's gonna get added real soon.
Yeah. So I mean, we're already working on improvements to this, but we just want to get in front of people so that we can be getting feedback on it to make sure that we're on the right course, that we're creating a tool for everyone and not for no one. So again, emailing consulting@growlink.com. Just give us your name and your email that you use for your facility, and we'll be in touch. We got a pretty small group today. And we're trying to keep the closed beta. We're going to like slowly expand it just so we're not trying to, help a bunch of people at once. But yeah, we're here to make sure you're successful with it. And then let's see here, Mia. I would love to use this for irrigation because I'm new to this and starting from my first run. Hey, congratulations. Yeah, and the slider bar there for the strategies are going to be good for people in their first time that's just like, hey, create a blueprint that's just going through, solely from vegetative to generative. You'll probably have a decent time with that. But yeah, we will actually have a written guide that is, it's an advanced generic strategy, but I mean, if you want to be doing that, that's the best way to do it for sure. And then Dean asks if we are using Copilot schedules in multiple zones and rooms, but they share the same pump. Does Copilot make sure that it is scheduling the watering in an empty time slot, or is there risk of opening multiple zones at one time?
So with that, you are in charge of determining your schedule on that if you have pump flow limitations. But there is bright side is we do have valve queuing, irrigation valve queuing, if you're using Copilot program. It's technically beta, meaning there's not a front end built for it right now, but it is slotted and with a way bigger release later on. But it's very functional. It works quite well. We have a lot of customers that use it. That's just something you would want to get a hold of me. Um, use the same email, the consulting, just say what it is you're trying to do. You got what programs they are, and then tell me what is the max number of valves that you can have opening at the same time. And I can have our developer, he'll look at your setup and he can actually program it on the back end for you to where if you need that valve queuing, it will do. So if you had like four valves open at the same time, you could only have two. It would irrigate the first two, and the next two would be placed in a queue and immediately open those when the other two are done.
Perfect. Yeah, there's perfect. Dean, reach out. Great. Yeah, Dean, just reach out. We can work together, help you make sure you're successful with that. There's also other simpler ways around that too. I mean, pump limitations are one thing, but typically we don't like we the system should be staggering out feeds for the most part if the valve are set up correctly in Copilot. So yeah, Marcus can help you either way it needs to go.
Yeah, most people they know their limitations and that's what we use the valve timeline feature in our irrigation dashboard where you can actually see the overlap and the overlay of all of your scheduled feeds happening. So most people will just offset, they'll just change their start time by like 5 minutes or whatever, so that they just basically offset all of the rows. So most of the time you handle it via timing, physical, like actually how you do your irrigation setup. But like I said, we do have the queuing function that can overlay off over like what would you call it? That can run in the background of that as a protection. So just in case you've got like for because you never know, sometimes you might end up having an overnight fail-safe shot kick on at the same time as another one. It's rare. Or you might have P2s that start shifting and moving throughout the day based on what Copilot's telling you to do. And you might end up with an overlap on your P2s, and it's really good for that. So we don't want to rely on it, if we don't have to, just like a fail-safe for the most part, but it is there if we need it.
Perfect. So go, all of this month, we're actually going to be doing these sessions every week. And so we're going to be going into basically the other parts of this. I mean, to demo this whole feature would literally take hours. And I mean, by the end of this hour, we're already have had too much information. So we're going to kind of break it up into, more sessions. And hopefully you guys get a chance to sign up, start using this. You're more than welcome to email us feedback, but we can even talk about feedback in these sessions as well. So obviously we talked about blueprints today. The next thing that we're going to talk about is basically converting your room to use this new style of blueprints. And if even if Marcus, we want to just kind of just pull it up real quick. We won't go into it because it's a webinar unto itself. Um, we are trying to simplify rules and just make it simpler for people to manage their setups in
Like
general.
this, or do you want the sub points and runs?
Um, I guess if set points and runs.
Okay.
Yeah,
So this
there we
is,
go.
yeah, we've kind of teased this before, but this is like the dashboard that you're going to be managing your rules in. This has a blueprint applied already, which is why we have predefined timelines and where we're currently at. There's still the climate, there's the lighting, there's the irrigation. As we can see, we have everything that we currently have in the program now. Uh, but yeah, this is where everything gets managed here.
Yeah,
For the room setup, like what you were asking.
yeah,
That's done under the settings here. So under the room, you have hardware and zones. I can go into lighting and I can define my zones here. I could create new zones. Under these zones, I can select what the equipment is, how many lights there are, what type they are, max throttles, all of that stuff. I can do the same thing. Same thing with environment. I could set heating devices built out for the room, different stages of how which devices I want to assign to what stage, what the dead bands are, same thing, cooling, all of that. And it goes on and so forth all the way through, including irrigation. So
yeah. So this hopefully means that, going forward, obviously we're using like rule groups and rule folders and all that stuff, managing rules, creating rules. at some point, once this is live, you should just be able to assign all your devices that's responsible for control, build blueprints, overlay them, and then just do like the micromanagement of the day-to-day stuff that you need here of just like, oh, bump up this set point or whatever. Those set point changes will then be logged in the blueprint for your future run so that all your little movements are saved so you don't have to replicate them next time. And again, just hopefully a lot less time spent in the platform just doing administrative things where you can just focus on your strategy is just being run and you can
It,
decouple from the computer.
this Trust me, from a use case standpoint, I've done a lot of work with the rules with a lot of customers, and if you've run through rules, they're not as bad as some other options out there in terms of
Yeah.
managing. But this here, the way we've set this up, it's made it to where you don't need to be an engineer. You don't need to be like you don't have to, I mean, even our rules now setting up dynamic and things like that, it can get complicated, especially when you're running multiple stages and you're trying to like stagger all of that stuff. So this is essentially making it pretty and well organized and very straightforward on exactly what's happening. And like Shay said, we're getting out of just creating random rules and hoping they all mesh together nicely, and we're doing it in a very cohesive manner where everything has a place, everything is assigned, every input, output on your hardware is assigned. We know exactly what it is, what it does, and what the parameters are that it can run under. And then with that set in your room, you're free to just change the set points up as much as you want via this management tab. So once you set these settings in your initial room commissioning or room setup, whether it's links, connects, UL panels, whatever it happens to be, once those are set, you really shouldn't have to go in there much. Your day to day should be coming in here, seeing how things are trending, and just tweaking the set points. Like, okay, I want to go up and down a little bit, or maybe I need to adjust this slightly. And that's where blueprints come in too. You can do it manually, but if you have a blueprint going on, it's going to auto adjust all of those things for you on a daily basis, however you need to. And you can see exactly what's running. And every time that you make a change and update something, it's going to create a split and it's going to save that change and create a brand new blueprint for you at the end if you'd like, so that you can actually log all of the changes that were made, from running that original blueprint.
Yeah.
So,
So yeah, super exciting. I mean, and obviously, you can continue to run your stuff as you are today. You don't have to upgrade your stuff to this. If you like, if it's working, great. But through the feedback of doing this for years and just talking to the people that we trust in the space, we've spent a lot of time making sure that this thing makes things easier for everybody. Marius asks, is this room setup going to be available for integration hubs? And what about blueprints? I believe it is available for integration hubs. Ray, am I misspeaking there?
No, I don't think it would matter what
Yeah,
equipment is on there. It's just setting up the rules differently. So the equipment
yeah.
shouldn't matter.
Yeah, so Marius, by the time this comes out, yes, all the Links fleet should have the ability to do blueprints, and yeah, the integration hub is part of that fleet. So yeah, you should be good to go there. Then yeah, Mia, if you're having like, if you need more help, please feel free just email consulting@growlink.com if you got some questions on getting started and stuff that you need. Obviously, if you come back next week, man, I'm really hoping to have the ebook by that time as well, and I'd love to be basically giving people access to it.
yeah, we'll go through that together for sure.
Yeah, that's a
So,
whole other webinar and a half.
yeah, that's going to be an ongoing thing. It explains how all this stuff works. It's what set points that I mean I would recommend, and then it goes through my exact strategy of how I use all of this stuff from start to finish throughout the entire run. So,
Perfect. Fantastic. We are at time, but if anybody has any last minute questions, I'll leave this open. Patrick, you are very welcome. Perfect. Well, yeah, if you guys want to start trying this stuff, please just email consulting at growlink.com and we'll work with you, get this on your setup. And yeah, we appreciate everyone showing up today, appreciate everybody's feedback. And like I said, we'll be here next week demoing kind of more control strategy stuff. You got it, Conrad. Thank you, man. Awesome. Everybody have a great week. We'll see you next time.
Take care.
Appreciate it, everyone.